Esports. It's one of the fastest growing sports in the world. Despite this, many people don't know anything about it. We asked some people on the street if they know what esports is.
Esports? No, I've never heard of it before.
No. The video game thing?
No.
No.
No, I do not.
I have no idea what esports is.
Video games have evolved a lot since its inception. One of the earliest, most well-known video games was Pong, developed in 1972. That same year, at Stanford University, the very first esports tournament was held. The game being played was called Space War. The grand prize was a year's subscription to Rolling Stone magazine. Video games have evolved a lot since then, and as video games have evolved, so have esports. The game's biggest esports tournaments attract over 36 million viewers, and the largest prize pool in esports is over $20 million. Esports now has a presence in most colleges. Penn State has several esports events happening in the next few months. We spoke with John Affleck, who oversaw most of esports events last year, to tell us a bit more about what's coming up.
We hosted here in the Carnegie Building an intercollegiate esports tournament that Penn State beat Pitt in the final and won. And the broadcast was put live on Twitch TV, which is a very popular channel for people to actually watch video games and tournaments on. And it was a pretty good success. It was a really good first time out. It's certainly a competition. It's certainly a competition that people are excited about. It's a competition that people can make a living at. So it has a lot of the earmarks of what we think of as professional sports.
Despite esports' growing presence, many people don't see it as an actual sport. So we met with a local esports athlete so he can tell us a little more about esports, about what goes on into becoming an esports athlete, and why esports should be considered a sport.
Essentially, esports is competitive video games, is probably the best way to describe it.
He first started getting into video games around the age of 5, 6 years old. Very early on, if I was ever playing a video game, he would pick it up and he would just far surpass what I was doing. And so he would go to bed at night, then I'd have to pick it back up and try to get to where he was. And it was frustrating sometimes. You'd spend a lot of money on a game and then like a week or two later he already beat it.
As a kid, I played a lot of Call of Duty and Halo on consoles. And then when I got into high school, I played a lot of StarCraft, and that's probably where I got my start in esports.
House, who wants some?
My favorite tournament was probably in Toronto, Canada. I traveled there to play in the StarCraft tournament, and it was a really good experience. I got to play with a lot of professional players.
The first time I remember him bringing up esports was probably when he was in college already. I was kind of like, why didn't they have something like that when I was younger?
The days before a tournament, I usually start a pretty heavy practice regime and kind of hammer out anything wrong with my gameplay. And then the hours before a game, I'll usually review the match and then kind of listen to some music. Well, in terms of training at the highest level, it's essentially the same, except that one is physical and one is a lot of mental things. So you're still practicing really heavily, you're still working on your team, you're still working with your coaches to kind of iron out your gameplay. Typically I do a lot of solo training, but if there's something I can't really overcome, then I ask my team for help. For games that are team games like League of Legends, teamwork is really important because you have to be communicating all the time. But even for just solo games, if you're playing on a team for an organization, it's really important to be talking with your teammates and kind of helping each other out. So typically before a game, I usually listen to a certain playlist to kind of like pump me up. I think everyone has doubts when they're competing, especially if you lose a game. A million questions run through your mind, like what if I did this, or if I just trained on this a little bit more. But at the end of the day, the game is done.
My favorite thing about esports is probably how you can go into a game and everyone is on equal footing. It doesn't matter your background, how you're raised, anything like that. It's just you go in and whoever has the most skill is going to win.
Well, I'm excited and at the same time very proud of him that he's involved in something that he's passionate about. Hopefully at some point it could actually become a career with the way esports is growing now.
I think esports growing is always a really good thing. I think it's a really good thing for people to get into who are competitive and might not like traditional sports. So I think it's a really good outlet for that. Well, if you're trying to get into esports and you want to be an esports athlete, just pick a game that you really like and just start playing it.